It's my pleasure to be here. Thank you very much for inviting me. Last year was a great success. The program was marvelous, and building on that success this year I think is going to also be very good. I'm very happy to be here, and I want to speak today at this opening panel discussion. There'll be four of us here, and this discussion is to talk about the current state of Islamic geometric patterns in terms of education and in terms of the use by architects and by artists and the general understanding by art historians, and to put it into a historical context and to think about how we can move forward. Each of the participants on this panel discussion that's just starting now will speak to one aspect or another of this. The people that are here to speak include Jean-Marc Costera, who is from Paris and who is a specialist in geometric ornament, Islamic geometric ornament, especially of the Maghreb. He's done marvelous work. His work is like mine. It also includes not just publications and methodology, but also the use of the patterns in modern architecture. Then also we have Marek Malowski, and Marek is a mathematician who is in Poland. He's worked in the Middle East as an educator for many, many years, and has published on Islamic geometric patterns here in Istanbul. You'll find his work, if you don't know it already, very edifying. And then Carol Beer is also here for the panel discussion that will start after we've all given a brief presentation. Carol is a historian of Islamic textiles, of Asian textiles generally, but more specifically of Islamic textiles. And she's also an educator and teaches students on the subject of geometry and symmetry in Islamic art. I myself, Jay Bonner, I'm a specialist in the area of Islamic geometric ornament, and I work both as a teacher but also as a primarily really as an ornamentalist in the field of architecture, and so I provide my ornamental designs for projects, working with our architects with projects in the Middle East. I've been very honored to work at the Prophet's Mosque in Medina and at the Grand Mosque in Mecca, and at various times on different aspects of those projects. So what I would like to start by speaking about is the approaches to teaching and contemporary architectural and artistic expression, but first to give a little bit of a background in geometric ornament generally. And will this scroll? Just one moment. So I would argue that Islamic geometric ornament is as relevant today as it has ever been. In some ways more so because we've lost so much of the understanding that it's more relevant today to help bring it back. And geometric ornament has been important to the cultures of humanity since the very beginning, and ancient examples exist from all cultures. So geometric ornament is something that is more than just Islamic. This is a Celtic example. This is a more modern example from Chicago by Louis Sullivan. This is a beautiful contemporary plate from the Acoma Pueblo in New Mexico, but no culture has brought it to the level of sophistication and beauty than Muslim cultures. The Muslim cultures put tremendous emphasis into different kinds of symmetries and different kinds of repeat patterns, with the result of tremendous diversity. No other culture approached geometric design in such a diverse fashion. And so that's getting ahead of myself. So Yeah, another aspect of the use by Muslim cultures that makes it different from other cultures of geometric patterns is that they applied it to so many different materials. From illumination and the work on paper to ceramics to wood to stone, in all of these different media, tremendous skill went into the production of highly diverse pattern types. And so this is really distinctive and sets it apart from other cultures. So there's something about geometry that's very appealing, not just to Muslim cultures clearly, but to all cultures. And so it's important to sort of have a sense of what we mean by geometry. And so geometry, on the one hand, yes, it's geometric forms that interact with each other in different ways, but it also, geometry, as you all know, is fundamental to all of creation, from the microcosm, the macrocosm. Here we have a picture of a galaxy. The symmetry of this galaxy is a geometric, a logarithmic geometric progression, and it's quite beautiful. This is something that happens on the grand scale, but then even on the most microcosmic scale, here we have little neutrinos. They're portions of atoms. They're tiny. And they also have a geometric component to them. So from the microcosm to the macrocosm, you have geometry happening. In the biological level, this is a virus. It has a spherical form. It's governed by Platonic and Archimedean symmetry. And similarly, here's a quasi-crystal. So geometry works at all of these levels very beautifully. So it pervades the universe. And it even pervades the neurology of the human mind. It's interesting to note that the human mind in certain conditions will have hallucinations that have a strong geometric component to them. In the 1920s, the psychologist Henrik Kluver categorized the different kinds of hallucinations that happen when people have migraine headaches as tunnels and funnels, spirals, lattices, and cobwebs. And when the human mind has, under the condition of a migraine headache, some 60% of migraine sufferers have visual hallucinations. These visual hallucinations are almost always very highly geometric. And this happens to people all over the world. Whatever their level of sophistication and education, it doesn't really matter if they're people with no education from the Amazon jungle or if they're PhD holders from London. It's the same thing. They have it's something inherent in the human mind. It also can happen during experimental sensory deprivation. People when they're exposed to sensory deprivation for a prolonged period of time will start to hallucinate frequently with geometric forms. There's also a syndrome called the Charles Bonnet syndrome that happens with certain kinds of partial blindness, where the human mind creates, it infills in the region of blindness and will oftentimes infill with geometric forms. And it can also happen with some sufferers of epilepsy. They'll have visions of geometric forms, and even with certain people when they take drugs and have psychoactive drugs and they have hallucinogenic experiences. This example here is from the Shipibo Indian tribe from the Peruvian Amazon, and these people take a particular drug from the Amazon jungle and they have visions, and then they create their visions with textile arts. And this is a beautiful example of a typical Shipibo pattern this is directly inspired by the visions. Oftentimes they make the pieces while they're experiencing. I don't recommend this for people, but it's something that is done and has been done for a long period of time with these people, and they do fantastic work. So clearly there's a component in the human mind that is geometrically inherent, and so it's no wonder that that the ability and the wish to make geometric patterns is inbuilt within us. It's not just something that has sort of been invented by certain people and carried on by certain other people in sort of a whimsical fashion. No, it's much more part of the human condition. I would say that it's important for me, it's important to keep that in mind, because oftentimes there's a sort of a very European, Western-centric view of Islamic art that says that the reason for the emphasis in geometric design and floral design is because the artists were not allowed to create imagery of the human body and of animals and of nature, so that they went in this direction that was more abstract. But that certainly has an element of truth, I have no doubt. But at the same time, I think that it's not enough of an explanation. So the Islamic tradition of ornament, geometric ornament, really started from the very onset. And during the Umayyad period and the Abbasid period, the earliest works were created. This is a beautiful Abbasid piece of wood carving from Jerusalem. And this is kind of typical of early work, very simple. This is just a simple hexagonal grid, hexagons and triangles, but look how beautifully it's been realized. As time went by, the tradition became more mature. As time went by, it became more mature and took on greater aspects of symmetry, greater aspects of complexity. And part of that has to do with new methods for making the patterns. And as this tradition developed, a key part of its development was the development of new methodologies. And new methodologies allowed for greater diversity. I'll talk about that in a little bit. So this is an example from Isfahan, and the Eastern tradition. I spoke about this last year in the program. The Eastern tradition of the Ghaznavids and the Ghurids and the Karakhanids and especially the Seljuks. These Turkic tribes, all of these are Turkic tribes with the exception of the Ghurids. These dynasties had very much the same aesthetic, and this was a Khorasani development that was, and also includes the area up in what's now Uzbekistan and in the northern regions of Central Asia up there. That this kind of work took on a level of sophistication that surpassed what was happening in other parts of the Islamic world, and then it moved westward. With the spread of the Seljuks into Anatolia and indeed into the Levant, into Syria and the regions to the west. And so really this more mature style was brought westward by the Seljuks and introduced and spread widely from there to, in this case, the Mamluks, this beautiful piece of mosaic, stone mosaic. The Mamluks did tremendous work and then continued to fully develop and become a fully mature style in a number of places, including Egypt under the Mamluks and including Anatolia here in Turkey under the Seljuks. The Seljuks had the benefit, the Seljuks here in Turkey had the benefit of not being overrun by the Mongols when the Mongol invasion happened. They negotiated a peace with them to be subject to them, so they had to pay a tax, but their culture wasn't overrun as the Seljuk cultures to the east were. They were completely overrun, their buildings were destroyed, there's very little remaining. Here, fortunately, in Turkey, the Seljuk architecture was not destroyed because they were able to come to an agreement with the Mongols. And so it's hard to know for sure if similar work by Seljuk artists to the east was as fully developed as it is here in Turkey. But really the Mongols represent, or rather, I'm sorry, the Seljuks here in Turkey, their geometric ornament, as this is an example right here, represents some of the most sophisticated geometric ornament in all of the Islamic world. The other great country, their later work happened in Iran, certainly under the Timurids especially, and some of the smaller cultures, but they were influenced from the work that was happening in Turkey. Similarly, very sophisticated work was happening in Egypt, on par with anything else. The Mamluks did fantastic work. But so then it's fully mature style. That last example, that's a fully mature pattern with 12, 11, and 10 and 9-pointed stars, all happening beautifully within an isometric network that is, as I say, a fully mature example of an Islamic geometric pattern. Another fully formed system of making patterns was this dual level technique that happened in the East, also happened in Morocco and in Spain, but they have different expressions in roughly the same period of time, a little bit earlier in Morocco, preceded by about 100 years. But these dual level patterns are fascinating, and they also represent a fully mature height of the tradition. So it took a while for people in the West to become interested in Islamic geometric patterns. During the Orientalist period in the 19th century, numbers of surveyors went out to the East and recorded patterns, put them into books. People like Bourgogne come to mind. Owen Jones is another one. This person, Calvert, Albert Calvert, was another Englishman who did a design book showing a number of representational patterns that, generally speaking, they did not ascribe their patterns or identify their patterns to specific locations. That's a failing, but that wasn't their point. Their point was to try and tell people back in Europe or in America, in the West, that there was this design tradition that's quite marvelous that the Muslim culture has produced. The most interesting to me is a man named Hanbury Hankin, E. Hanbury Hankin. He was stationed in India as a member of the British military, and he was fascinated by the geometric patterns there and had the benefit of finding a piece of plaster ornament that had crumbled off the wall, and he was able to see the layout lines that the artists used to create the pattern. And those layout lines were a network of polygons. And he was able to identify that the patterns in question, the patterns themselves, were created from these underlying polygonal networks, these polygonal tessellations. So he published several works, and his works have not really been widely recognized because they haven't been republished. And so his work is largely unknown, but it's extremely important. To my mind, it's especially important because I'm a proponent of this same technique or methodology, which I call the polygonal technique. I call it that because, I believe it's so important, or I know it's so important because I have other examples of historical evidence for its use, including the Topkapi scroll. And it's the only technique that really is able to produce the wide range of complexity and diversity that this tradition is characterized by. So now, methodology is key. I want to come up now to the current day. Methodology is key to this tradition going forward into the future in a way that can be as fully diverse and rich as in the past. The problem with most of the methods of teaching, they use a technique that is a sort of a constructive technique, a step-by-step construction that you go starting with a circle and dividing it into parts and then connecting points to points, and you end up with a pattern. The problem with this technique is that it only really creates one pattern. It's a step-by-step procedure that will produce one pattern or recreate an existing pattern. It's a very cumbersome way to make new patterns, and it's also really only relevant to making very simplified patterns. It doesn't work for making the highly complex patterns. In this case, the program, the Aga-Khan program at MIT and Harvard is probably the preeminent university program for teaching Islamic art in the world. It's very, very good, There's no doubt about it. The program, the Aga Khan program at Harvard is art historical. The program at MIT is for practitioners or for architects, specifically for architects. I want to switch now to the question of education. So it's problematic at the program, the Aga Khan's program, because despite the fact that the program at MIT is focused on practical implementation of Islamic architectural ideas, urban planning, everything from urban planning to architectural form, they have nobody teaching geometric patterns, which is, I find, astonishing, because Islamic patterns are such a primary aspect of the ornamental tradition of Islamic architecture. They also don't have anybody teaching muqarnas, and they don't have anybody teaching floral idiom. They don't have anybody teaching calligraphy. These are the important aspects of Islamic architecture, ornamental aspects of the Islamic architecture, but they're not teaching that. And part of the reason they're not teaching it is they don't have people who can teach it. So what the world needs right now, the world of Islamic architecture and design needs right now, are people who can teach students so that this tradition can become more vital once again. Without people teaching it, they have no one to hire to teach it. So this is an example of what they're doing at MIT right now. Look, draw an Islamic geometric pattern in less than 5 minutes. Hey, 5 minutes. 5 minutes, I mean, and what is that pattern? It's just, it's a recreation of a very simple pattern that isn't real. Okay, after 5 minutes you can make this pattern, but this does not represent the tradition of complexity and diversity that characterizes. It's very much a watered down way of approaching the subject, and it's a pity because it's just not enough, especially for a place as exalted as MIT under the Aga Khan. Another institution is the Prince of Wales Institute of Traditional Arts in London. They have a program teaching geometry, including Islamic geometry. They also take the same basic constructivist approach, step-by-step procedure to recreate existing designs and basically to recreate rather simple existing designs. They're not teaching students to really to create new original patterns. It's almost all recreation, and even the patterns that they're recreating are fairly basic patterns. This is a good example in point. So the result of this is that when architects want to incorporate patterns into their buildings, they are kind of forced to work from pattern books or from the internet, and they'll go in and they'll find something and then they'll redraw it and they'll stick it into context. This is a case in point. It's a university building in Riyadh. And this geometric pattern is a very well-known pattern of eight-pointed stars and octagons. It's a nice pattern. It's been used again and again. In this case, you can see the kind of clumsy use of the pattern, because the pattern is then superimposed on top of the pattern is this tracery network of arches. And the geometry of the arches and the geometry of the geometric pattern right behind it bear no similarity whatsoever from each other. They don't bear any similarity. They don't repeat on the same module. They're incompatible. And so this is the kind of problem that happens with a lack of understanding. And the problems in the Islamic world of architecture abound with this kind of I would say, mistreatment. Now, one of the things that's hopeful is that some of the teaching that's happening worldwide right now is really very excellent. And one place in point is the Academy of Traditional Arts in Casablanca. Jean-Marc Castera is one of their teachers and will be speaking in a few minutes on his work there as a teacher of design. And I look forward to hearing about that. I was there last year. It's a fantastic institute The work that the students do in wood and in plaster and in stone and in jewelry and in weaving, they're doing really fantastic work. So this is a sign of good things to come, that they're training a new generation of artists, and it's really very good. And this is what's needed. So there are some people out in the world today who are doing some really superb quality geometric design, and I just want to show a few examples. There are many more than I'm showing, but these are a few people. This is one of my students, Marc Pelletier. He is Pelletier. He lives in the United States. This is a dual level pattern. The primary pattern is a well-known five-fold pattern, but the secondary pattern, the sharp pattern, is one of his own design, and this is a very nice example of contemporary dual level ornament. Another one of my students, Nathan Verrill. He's also from the United States. He does some fantastic work with patterns that have multiple regions of localized symmetry. So he'll make patterns with, 9, 10, and 11-pointed stars, or something like this. This is a seven-fold pattern with 14-pointed stars and 7-pointed stars of his. This is a fellow. This is a very bad. No, that doesn't work well at all. But another American named Joe Bartholomew does really quite exceptional work. I have not met him yet. I look forward to meeting him. This is taken from an image he sent me, but it doesn't reproduce well at all. But Joe Bartholomew does really fine work. And then Craig Kaplan. Craig, all of you might know. I would really recommend that this program, should it happen next year, you should try to get Craig Kaplan to come and be one of your overseas speakers. He's really excellent, and he has done quite a lot of work with applying geometric patterns to non-Euclidean space, into hyperbolic and into spherical geometry. This is a really lovely example. This pattern is not possible in a two-dimensional plane. It's only possible on a sphere. It's quite lovely. It's 9-pointed stars and 16-pointed stars. And then I want to say, so this tradition, how does it move forward in a way that is really beneficial to architecture and to the beauty of architecture? And there are a number of key factors that I believe are essential, and one is a better understanding for designers of design methodology. This is my own focus of interest, what I've spent a lot of time on. And another is the kind of the balance between geometry, floral, and calligraphy. This is something that Muslim cultures had a very refined. These are the three aspects of Islamic ornament, and each Muslim culture had a different way of balancing these three components. But the key here is that there is a consciousness in the mind of the artists to not just think of their own discipline. Let's say I do floral work, so I'll just think about the floral. No, there's a broader focus on trying to create an environment that balanced all three of these elements in a beautiful, beautiful way. Another key feature for moving forward into the future is the need for the ornament to be integral with the architecture rather than just as an applied feature. Very much the Western approach ever since the Baroque period has been to just apply ornaments into a building. So the building is built, and then somebody comes and sort of says, well, we'll put a cherub there, and we'll put some floral pattern over there, and it's kind of just applied. It's not integral. Islamic architecture, by contrast, is extremely integral, so much so that the proportions of the building itself will often be dictated by the geometric patterns that are living inside that building. In other words, you have a facade, a beautiful facade, an iwan, let's say, for example, with geometric ornament framing the archway entrance into the courtyard. And that geometric pattern is going to dictate the proportions of that rectilinear opening. And as such, the people who designed the building were working very closely with the architects, if they weren't, maybe they were the same people, creating an architecture that had integral ornament. And this is a key feature of Islamic architecture that people now moving into the future need to be thinking about, because it makes for greater beauty. Then also it's necessary for the designers working in the moving forward into the architecture of the future to be conscious of the constraints that design bears upon, the constraints that fabricating and different media have upon the design process. And this is a key thing, that it's easy to design work in the abstract, but if you're designing for a specific material, say carved stone, you need to know the constraints of that material in order to design something that will be fabricated easily and will last forever and ever and ever. So the link between material and design is one that needs to be understood for successful quality. And then there's also the need to marry technologies of hand craftsmanship and modern fabrication. And so this is an example. This is one of the 27 domes in Medina. I designed the ornament for these domes. This is the Prophet's Mosque in Medina. And it was a collaboration of carvers, traditional wood carvers in Morocco, working in traditional ways with very high-tech 3D fabrication of the ribs, because they were so complex. They're compound curves. They curve in two directions simultaneously. They're complex forms that would be almost impossible to do by hand. So this was done with digital control in Germany. So being able to work with marrying technologies is a key feature. And I will end just by saying that another key feature is to put work into the hands of master craftspeople so that the artists that can create the beautiful objects have employment and their traditions don't die out. Okay, so moving into the future, we need, as designers working in the architectural world, we need to be employing people to make our work that are excellent, so the work is beautiful, but also so that we are encouraging those ateliers to have ongoing work that's really quite beautiful and meaningful. And so this is the mimbar. It's not geometric. I also do floral ornaments, and I had the great honor to be asked to design the mimbar for the Kaaba some years ago, and this was done in India by excellent wood stone carvers, amongst the best in the world. It's all made from marble from Macedonia. The Saudi clients wanted to use the whitest marble that they could find. They wanted it to be, it's so white that it looks like plastic, but anyway, it's pure white, and it's from Macedonia. It was hard for the Indian carvers to carve, but look at this detail. If you can see, the quality of the carving is just outstanding. So this is one group of people that they need to be sustained with more projects. There are artists in Morocco, in Turkey, in Iran, in India, in Pakistan, in Indonesia that are fantastic artists, and the designers here or not here in Turkey, but the designers in the West, or designers just generally, need to be turning to these craftspeople and putting them, involving them in the projects, not just for the beauty that they are able to bring to the project, but also to help sustain these communities. Okay, so that kind of concludes what I was wanting to introduce this panel discussion on with the current state and how we move forward with Islamic geometric patterns. And I would now like to bring Carol Beer up to the podium, please. And as I said, Carol is an art historian, a specialist in textiles, a teacher, and you'll find her work very interesting indeed. Thank you.